The train station was loud with departures, but inside her, everything was silent. Rain slid down the cracked glass roof in crooked lines, blurring the yellow lights into trembling stars. People rushed past with suitcases, laughter, complaints, phone calls. Life moving forward with cruel efficiency. And in the middle of it all, she stood alone. Her name was Alara Voss, and she was still wearing her wedding dress. The fabric, once ivory and elegant, clung to her like a memory she couldn't tear off. Mud stained the hem. One sleeve was torn clean through. The veil hung crooked from her hair, half burned, the lace edges blackened and brittle. A long, raw scar ran from her left temple down across her cheek, pulling her mouth slightly downward, an injury still fresh, still red, still throbbing. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't broken, but because she was empty. People stared. Some whispered. A woman tugged her child closer. A man muttered, "Poor thing," and kept walking. No one stopped. Alara's fingers tightened around the envelope in her hand. Thick paper. Expensive. His handwriting, sharp, confident, careless. She had read the letter once. She would never read it again. A voice echoed over the speakers. Final boarding call for the 6:40 to Northbridge. Northbridge. That was supposed to be their honeymoon. Her fiancé, Julian Hale, heir to one of the most powerful families in the city, had promised her the world. He had knelt in front of her, eyes soft, voice trembling just enough to feel real. "I don't care what they say," he had whispered back then. "You are enough. You are everything." She believed him. That belief had cost her everything. 2 days earlier, the fire had started behind her. She remembered the heat first, the roar, the way the air itself seemed to scream. The warehouse doors were locked. She hadn't known why she was there at all, only that Julian had asked her to meet him, urgently, secretly. "Trust me," he had said. Smoke filled her lungs as she ran. Something exploded. Metal screamed. A beam collapsed, striking her face, pinning her down. She had screamed his name until her throat tore raw. No one came. She survived because a night watchman broke protocol and checked the building early. Julian never visited the hospital. Not once. Instead, he sent a letter. "Alara, I never meant for this to go so far, but appearances matter. My family cannot be tied to scandal, disfigurement, or weakness. You understand, don't you? This is for the best. You'll find money enclosed. Please don't contact me again. Disfigurement. Weakness." She folded the letter slowly and slid it back into the envelope. Then she did something she hadn't done since waking up in the hospital. She laughed. It came out wrong, cracked, hollow, almost frightening. "For the best," she whispered. The train doors hissed open. Alara didn't move. She had nowhere to go. Across the station, someone else was watching her. He stood near the far wall, half hidden in shadow, a large man with a posture that suggested he preferred to disappear. His coat was old but clean, his boots worn but sturdy. A deep scar ran diagonally across his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. Another twisted across his right hand, thick and raised. His name was Rowan Ash, and he knew what abandonment looked like. He had noticed her the moment she walked in, not because of the dress, not even because of the scar, but because of the way she stood, too still, like someone bracing for impact that had already come. Rowan had been a soldier once. Fire, blood, betrayal. He carried them all beneath his skin. He had learned to read silence better than screams. And this woman was screaming without a sound. A security guard approached her. "Miss, you can't stay here if you're not traveling." Alara looked at him, eyes dull. "I'm waiting." "For what?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The guard shifted, uncomfortable. "You'll have to move along." Rowan felt something tighten in his chest. He stepped forward before he could stop himself. "She's with me?" Both Alara and the guard turned to him. Alara frowned. "I don't." Rowan met her gaze. His eyes were steady. Calm. Not pitying. Not curious. Just present. "She's had a long night," he said quietly. "We're leaving soon." The guard hesitated, then nodded, All right, don't cause trouble. As the man walked away, Alara stared at Rowan like he'd spoken in a language she'd forgotten. You didn't have to do that, she said. Rowan shrugged. He didn't have to do that either. She studied him then. The scars, the guarded expression, the way his shoulders carried invisible weight. Why? She asked. He answered honestly. Because I know what it's like when the world decides you're inconvenient. Something flickered in her eyes. Not hope, recognition. The loudspeaker crackled again. Another train. Another destination she couldn't imagine. I'm not going anywhere, she said softly, almost to herself. Rowan nodded. Neither was I. They stood there in the noise and motion, two broken people orbiting the same quiet center. Finally, she asked, do you believe people show you who they really are at the worst moment? Rowan didn't answer right away. Then he said, I believe the worst moment shows you who survives. Alara swallowed. A woman in a tailored coat passed by, then stopped abruptly. Her eyes widened. Alara, she gasped. Oh my God, what happened to your face? Alara stiffened. The woman stepped closer, horror barely masked by fascination. Julian said you disappeared, that you were unstable. Unstable. Rowan felt Alara's hand tremble at her side. He said, the woman continued, lowering her voice, that you tried to trap him, that the fire was an accident you caused. The station seemed to tilt. Rowan looked at Alara. Slowly, her jaw tightened. He said that. The woman nodded. Everyone knows. His family made sure of it. Rowan felt something dark and cold settle in his chest, because now he understood. This wasn't just abandonment. This was erasure. Alara straightened her spine. The wedding dress rustled softly as she lifted her chin. Thank you, she said to the woman, her voice steady in a way that surprised even herself. That tells me everything I need to know. As the woman walked away, whispering into her phone, Rowan spoke, low and firm. They're not done with you. Alara exhaled slowly. No, she said. They're just getting started. She turned to him, eyes burning now. Not with tears, but with something sharper. Will you help me leave this place? Rowan hesitated. He had learned long ago not to get involved, not to care. But scars recognize scars. Yes, he said. And as they walked toward the exit together, neither of them noticed a man standing near the ticket machines, watching Alara closely, already dialing a number. Sir, he murmured into the phone, she's here, and she's not alone. The call connected, and somewhere across the city, Julian Hale smiled. The rain followed them out of the station. It wasn't dramatic rain. It didn't pour or roar. It drizzled steadily, soaking through fabric, creeping under collars, settling into bones. The kind of rain that felt patient, relentless. Alara pulled the torn sleeve of her dress closer to her body as they crossed the street. Every step felt unreal, like she was walking out a life that had already ended and into one that hadn't begun yet. Rowan didn't rush her. He matched her pace without comment, holding the umbrella just high enough to cover them both. His silence wasn't empty. It felt respectful, like he wasn't trying to fix her or question her pain. After a few blocks, she finally spoke. Where are we going? Somewhere dry, Rowan replied. Somewhere no one knows me. She almost smiled. They stopped in front of a small building wedged between a closed laundromat and a boarded-up cafe. A flickering sign buzzed above the door. Heartfelt Inn. Inside, the lobby smelled like old wood and weak coffee. The woman behind the desk barely glanced up until she noticed Alara's dress. Her eyes widened. Then her gaze slid to Alara's scar. The look changed, not shock this time, but calculation. No vacancies, the woman said quickly. Rowan didn't move. The sign says otherwise. The woman shrugged. Sign's broken. Alara felt a familiar tightening in her chest. The quiet rejection. The unspoken not you. She turned away. It's fine. But Rowan leaned forward, placing both scar hands on the counter. She was in a fire, he said calmly. She's exhausted. We'll take one room. The woman's lips pressed in. I don't want trouble. Rowan met her stare, without blinking. Neither do we. A long moment passed. Finally, the woman sighed. One night, cash only. Rowan paid without a word. As they climbed the narrow stairs, Ilera whispered, "You didn't have to push." "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." The room was small but clean. One bed, one chair, a cracked mirror. Ilera stood frozen in the center of the room, suddenly unsure of herself. She hadn't been alone with a stranger since before the fire, before the lies. "I'll sleep on the floor," Rowan said immediately, already shrugging off his coat. "No," she said, surprising herself at the firmness in her voice. "You won't." He paused. "I'm not fragile glass," she continued, "and I'm not afraid of you." Rowan studied her, then nodded once. "All right." She sat on the edge of bed, fingers twisting in the ruined fabric of her dress. After a moment, Rowan spoke. "You should get out of that. It's soaked." She laughed softly, bitter. "That dress cost more than my childhood home." "Then let it be the last thing that takes from you," he said. She looked up. Something in his voice made her stand. Slowly, deliberately, Ilera untied the back of the dress. Each knot felt like a goodbye. When it finally slid to the floor, she stood there in a simple hospital gown she'd been wearing underneath, another reminder of survival. She didn't cry. She stepped over the dress and kicked it aside. Rowan turned away, giving her space. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" "For not looking at me like I'm already ruined." He answered without hesitation. "You're not." Across the city, Julian Hale stood before a wall of glass overlooking glittering lights. "She's with a man?" he asked into the phone. "Yes, sir," the voice replied. "Scarred. Looks rough." Julian smiled thinly. "Perfect." He turned to his mother, who sat elegantly on a leather sofa, legs crossed, expression cool. "She's making a spectacle," Lady Hale said. "People are starting to ask questions." Julian scoffed. "Let them. By morning, they'll believe what we want them to believe." "And the man—" Julian's eyes darkened. "Find out who he is. Everyone has a weakness." Morning came too fast. Ilera woke to the sound of voices outside the door. Raised. Angry. Rowan was already on his feet. "She's in there," a man's voice said. "I saw her." A knock came, hard, sharp. "This is management. Open up." Rowan opened the door just enough to step into the hallway, blocking the view inside. "What's the problem?" The manager crossed his arms. "Your friend didn't disclose her condition." Rowan's jaw tightened. "Her condition?" "She's bad for business. Guests don't want to see that." Ilera stepped forward then, heart pounding, but spine straight. "I'll leave," she said calmly. "I don't want trouble." The manager's gaze flicked to her scar. His discomfort was obvious. Rowan felt something snap. "She's paid," he said. "You don't get to humiliate her." The manager sneered. "Or what?" Rowan leaned closer, his voice low. "Or you'll remember this conversation every time you look in the mirror." The manager hesitated, then scoffed. "Out, both of you." As the door slammed behind them minutes later, Ilera felt the sting of it all crash down at once. "I ruin everything," she whispered. Rowan stopped walking. "No," he said firmly. "You expose things. People hate that." She looked at him, eyes wet now. "I don't know who I am anymore." He nodded slowly. "Then we figure out." They walked until the city thinned, buildings giving way to old warehouses and quiet streets. Rowan led her to a low, brick structure near the river. "This is where I stay," he said. Inside was sparse but warm. Tools hung neatly on the walls. A small kitchen. A table scarred with use. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Because alone is predictable." She nodded. She understood that too well. Over tea that tasted like comfort, she told him everything. The engagement, the fire, the letter, the lies spreading faster than truth. Rowan listened without interruption. When she finished, her hands were shaking. "They took my voice," she said. "My future. My face." Rowan reached across the table, not to touch her, but to place his hand near hers. "They didn't take your spine," he said. And they didn't take your truth. She laughed weakly. Truth doesn't matter when power speaks louder. Then we make it louder, he replied. She looked at him sharply. How? Before he could answer, a knock came at the door. 3 sharp raps. Rowan stood, eyes narrowing. Stay here. He opened the door. 2 men in suits stood outside. Polite smiles. Cold eyes. Rowan Ash? One asked. Yes. We'd like to talk to you about the woman inside. Rowan's fists clenched, because now he knew. They hadn't just found her. They had found him too. And Alara, watching from the shadows, felt the first real fear since the fire bloom in her chest. Because whatever was coming next wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about war. The men in suits didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Power never shouted. It whispered, confident that the world would lean in to listen. Rowan stood in the doorway, broad shoulders filling the frame, his presence an unspoken warning. The taller of the 2 men smiled with practiced ease. Mr. Ash, he said, we're not here to cause trouble. Rowan's eyes didn't soften. You're already doing that by standing here. The second man chuckled lightly. Direct. We respect that. Say what you came to say, Rowan replied. Then leave. The taller man adjusted his cufflinks. We represent the Hale family. Inside the room, Ilara's breath caught. The name hit her like cold water to the face. Hale, Julian, the life she had been erased from. We understand, the man continued, that you recently offered assistance to someone formerly connected to us. Rowan didn't glance back. She's not property. No, the man said smoothly, but she is a liability. Rowan felt the words settle like ash in his chest. What do you want? He asked. A simple arrangement, the man replied. You walk away. Today. No statements. No interviews. No attempts to involve yourself further. And in return, the man smiled wider. You'll be compensated. Generously. Rowan laughed once. Humorless. You don't know me very well. We know enough, the second man said, stepping forward. Your military record. Your discharge. The incident overseas that left 3 men dead and you decorated but discarded. Rowan's jaw tightened. We know how the system treats men like you, the man continued. You could use friends in high places. Silence stretched. Inside, Ilara pressed her hand to her mouth, heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She had never known this about Rowan, never imagined the depth of what he carried. Rowan finally spoke. You're done. The taller man sighed. Think carefully. Loyalty is expensive. Rowan leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. So is betrayal. The smiles faded. We'll be in touch, the man said coldly. For your sake, I hope you reconsider. When the door closed, the room felt smaller, heavier. Rowan turned. Ilara was standing there, pale but steady. They threatened you, she said. They tried, he replied. I didn't know about your past. I don't advertise it. She swallowed. You don't owe me anything. Rowan met her eyes. I know. The unspoken truth hung between them. This wasn't going to end quietly. The next days unfolded like a tightening noose. Articles began to appear online. Anonymous sources. Carefully worded lies. Former fiancé of Hale Air linked to suspicious fire. Questions raised about woman's mental stability. Unknown man with criminal past seen accompanying her. Ilara read them in silence, each headline carving deeper into her chest. They're rewriting everything, she whispered. Yes, Rowan said. That's how power protects itself. Her hands trembled. What if they're right? What if I really am damaged? Rowan knelt in front of her, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me, he said firmly. Damage doesn't make you disposable, and scars don't make you guilty. Tears finally fell. Hot, uncontrolled. I lost everything, she cried. My future, my name. People look at me like I'm already buried. Rowan didn't flinch from her pain. Then we dig our way out. Across the city, Julian watched the same headlines with satisfaction. Public opinion is shifting, his mother said calmly. Exactly as planned. Julian leaned back, fingers steepled, and the man, still with her, Lady Hale replied, but he's predictable. Men like him always are. Julian smirked. Everyone has a breaking point. That night, Rowan showed Alara the locked metal box beneath his floorboards. Inside were documents, photos, audio files. What is this? She asked. Insurance, he said. Things people wanted buried. She flipped through them, eyes widening. This could destroy lives. Yes. Why keep it? Because one day, Rowan said quietly, someone would need the truth more than they needed comfort. Alara looked at him, realization dawning. You were waiting, she whispered. Maybe, he admitted. Or maybe I was just tired of being silent. Her hands clenched into fists. I don't want revenge. Neither do I. Then what is this? Rowan met her gaze. Justice. They began carefully. Alara recorded her story. Every detail of the fire, the locked doors, the unanswered calls, the letter. Rowan contacted an old journalist friend, someone who still believed truth mattered. Each step forward brought another threat. Strange cars parked outside, phones that went silent mid-call, warnings delivered without words. One night, as Alara stood by the window, she noticed movement across the street. Rowan, she whispered, we're being watched. He followed her gaze and cursed softly. They're escalating, he said, which means they're afraid. Her voice shook. What if they hurt you? He looked at her gently. What if they don't? She shook her head. This is my fight. It became ours the moment they knocked on my door, he replied. The breaking point came faster than either expected. Rowan returned one evening to find the workshop ransacked, papers scattered, the metal box gone. Alara stared at the empty floor in horror. They took it, she whispered. All the evidence. Rowan's fist clenched until the scars burned. No, he said slowly. They think they did. He pulled a small drive from his pocket. Backups, he said. Always backups. Relief flooded her face, then faded as his phone rang. An unknown number. Rowan answered. Julian's voice filled the room, smooth and amused. You should have taken the money, Julian said. Now things get unpleasant. Alara felt her blood run cold. Stay away from her, Rowan said. Julian laughed. You don't make demands anymore. The call ended. Moments later, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Rowan's phone buzzed with a notification. Warrant issued. Rowan Ash. Charges. Arson, assault, obstruction. Alara stared at the screen, breathless. They framed you, she whispered. Rowan's expression hardened, not with fear but resolve. They want me gone, he said, so you'll be alone again. Footsteps echoed outside. Flashing lights painted the walls red and blue. Rowan grabbed his jacket and pressed the drive into Alara's hand. No, she said desperately. I won't leave you. You have to, he said. You're the truth now. The pounding on the door grew louder. Alara, Rowan said softly, gripping her hands. Whatever happens next, don't stop. Tears streamed down her face. I won't. The door began to splinter, and as Rowan turned to face it, Alara realized something terrifying and powerful at the same time. This was the moment that would decide whether truth survived, or whether it burned just like everything else she had loved. The door broke inward with a crack that felt like a gunshot. Wood splintered. Boots thundered across the floor. Shouts filled the workshop, sharp and rehearsed. Police? Rowan Ash, get on the ground. Rowan didn't resist. He raised his hand slowly, eyes never leaving Alara. Go, he mouthed. She stood frozen, clutching the small drive so tightly it cut into her palm. Alara! An officer barked, noticing her. Step away from him. She obeyed, legs shaking, heart screaming. As Rowan was forced to his knees, she saw something she hadn't expected. Peace, not surrender, not defeat, resolve. As they dragged him up, Rowan's voice cut through the chaos, calm and steady. Tell the truth, he said, even when they try to bury it. Then he was gone, handcuffed, pushed into the flashing night, swallowed by sirens and shadows. And Alara was alone again. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. The workshop felt hollow, violated. Every scattered paper, every overturned chair felt like an accusation. She sank into a chair, breathing hard. "You're the truth now." The words echoed until they stopped sounding like comfort and started sounding like a command. Alara wiped her face, stood, and did something she hadn't done since the fire. She chose not to run. Rowan's arrest dominated the morning news. Decorated veteran arrested in connection with warehouse fire. Authorities say evidence points to long-standing criminal pattern. Woman at center scandal remains at large. They didn't use her name anymore. She was just a woman. Alara watched from a public library computer. Her hood pulled low, scar exposed without apology. Every headline felt like a blade aimed at Rowan's back. "They're destroying him," she whispered. A librarian glanced at her, uneasy. Alara closed the browser. "No," she corrected softly. "They're afraid of him." She pulled the drive from her pocket, and she knew exactly what she had to do next. The journalist Rowan had mentioned was named Caleb Morn, independent, fired from 3 major networks for ethical inflexibility, blacklisted, dangerous to people who preferred clean lies. Alara found his office above a closed bookstore, the stairwell smelling of dust and ink. Caleb opened the door cautiously. "Yes." "My name is Alara Voss," she said, "and I have proof." He studied her face, really looked at her scar, her posture, the way she didn't flinch. "Come in," he said quietly. Caleb listened for 4 hours without interruption. He listened to the recording of Julian's voice. He read the documents. He stared at the photos of locked exits, altered blueprints, falsified inspections. When Alara finished, her throat burned. "They're framing him," she said, "just like they framed me." Caleb leaned back slowly. "This isn't just a scandal," he murmured. "This is systemic." "Will you publish it?" she asked. He met her eyes. "If I do, they'll come for me too." She nodded. "They already are." Silence stretched. Finally, Caleb smiled grimly. "I didn't become a journalist to be safe." Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but relief. "Then we do this together," she said. The first article dropped at midnight, not on a major network, on every platform that still allowed raw truth. The hailfire, evidence of corporate sabotage, cover-up, and human cost. It spread faster than anyone expected. Shares, comments, outrage. By morning, the city was buzzing. People paused, reread, asked questions. For the first time, the narrative cracked. Julian smashed his glass against the wall. "Shut it down," he snarled. Every site, every feed. Lady Hale stood rigid, eyes sharp. "It's too late for silence." "Then we discredit her." Julian snapped. "Drag her through the dirt." "We already tried," his mother replied coldly. "And she didn't break." Julian's hands shook. "Then break her." Alara felt the shift immediately. Her phone lit up with messages, some hateful, some apologetic, some confused. A stranger stopped her on the street. "You're her," the woman said softly. "The one from the article." Alara braced herself. The woman surprised her by saying, "I'm sorry." Then another person nodded at her. Then another. Not everyone believed, but enough did. Enough to make noise. At the detention center, Rowan watched the news on a flickering television. He saw Alara's face. Not crying, not hiding, speaking, telling the truth. A guard scoffed. "Your girlfriend's causing trouble." Rowan smiled faintly. She always did. For the first time since his arrest, hope stirred. The pressure mounted. An internal investigation was announced. A whistleblower came forward. Then another. The story grew teeth. And then retaliation. Caleb's office was vandalized. Alara's photo was leaked alongside lies and accusations. One night, as Alara walked back to her temporary shelter, footsteps followed her. She turned. A man blocked her path. "You should have stayed quiet," he said calmly. Her heart raced, but she didn't back away. "No," she replied. You should have told the truth sooner. His hand moved. Before he could reach her, headlights flared. A car screeched to a stop. The man fled into the darkness. Caleb leaned out the window, pale. They're done pretending. Elara nodded. So are we. The court date was set. Rowan would face charges in 48 hours. If he lost, everything they'd fought for would collapse. Elara stood in front of a mirror that night, tracing the scar on her face. She remembered Julian's words. Disfigurement. Weakness. She straightened her shoulders. Tomorrow she would testify. Publicly. They wanted her ashamed. They wanted her silent. Instead, she would stand in the light. As she turned off the lamp, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A message appeared. Testify and Rowan dies in prison. Her breath caught. Another message followed. Disappear and he walks free. Elara sank onto the bed, shaking, not with fear, but fury, because now the choice was clear. And whatever she decided, next would decide everything. She whispered into the dark, voice steady despite the storm inside her. You don't get to choose for me anymore. Outside, thunder rolled, and somewhere behind steel walls, Rowan stared at the ceiling, unaware that the final battle for truth was about to begin, one that would demand more courage from Elara than she had ever imagined. Morning arrived without mercy. Gray light crept through the courthouse windows, cold and unforgiving, illuminating marble floors that had witnessed centuries of lies dressed as law. Cameras lined the steps outside. Protesters gathered on opposite sides, some holding signs with Elara's name, others clutching headlines fed to them by powerful mouths. Inside, the air trembled. Elara stood in a small restroom, staring at her reflection. The scar on her face was fully visible now. She had stopped trying to hide it. No makeup, no veil, just skin that told a story the world had tried to erase. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Last chance. She turned the phone off. Her hands were steady as she smoothed her coat. Not today, she whispered. Not ever again. Rowan was brought into the courtroom in chains. He looked thinner, bruised, but unbroken. When his eyes found Elara across the room, something shifted in his chest. Relief, pride, fear, all tangled together. She gave him a small nod. I'm here. Julian Hale entered moments later, flawless as ever. Perfect suit, perfect hair. The smile of the man who believed the world would always bend for him. He didn't look at Elara. He didn't need to, or so he thought. The proceedings began. Prosecutors spoke confidently, laying out their version of events, carefully selected evidence. Witnesses coached to remember just enough, forget the rest. They painted Rowan as violent, unstable, convenient. Then came the defense. And then, Elara Voss to the stand. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Julian finally turned. Their eyes met. For the first time since the fire, he flinched. Elara walked to the stand slowly, deliberately. Each step felt like reclaiming ground stolen from her. She was sworn in. Ms. Voss, the defense attorney said gently, can you tell the court why you are here today? Elara took a breath. I'm here, she said clearly, because the truth was buried under money, power, and fear, and because an innocent man is being punished for refusing to stay silent. She turned her head slightly, and because I was almost killed for trusting the wrong people. Julian's jaw tightened. She told everything. The meeting request, the locked doors, the fire, the unanswered calls, the letter. Her voice didn't shake. When the prosecution tried to interrupt, the judge held up a hand. Let her finish. Elara continued. They said I was unstable, that I caused a fire, that my face, she paused briefly, then went on, made me inconvenient. Gasps filled the room. She lifted her chin. I am not ashamed of surviving. Evidence was introduced. Audio recordings, emails, blueprints altered after the fact, payments disguised as donations. One by one, the lies collapsed. Caleb sat in the gallery, already typing. The prosecution faltered. Then, Mr. Hale, the defense said calmly, would you care to explain this recording? Julian stiffened as his own voice filled the courtroom. You should have taken the money. The room erupted. Lady Hale's face drained of color. Julian stood abruptly. This is a setup. The judge slammed the gavel. Order. Ilera watched him unravel, not with hatred, with clarity. The final blow came when a former Hale employee took the stand. I was told to lock the exits, he said, voice shaking. I was told it was for an inspection drill. When I realized what was happening, it was too late. Silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. The judge leaned back, eyes hard. The verdict didn't take long. Rowan was cleared. Every charge dismissed. Julian Hale was taken into custody before he could leave the courtroom. As the handcuffs snapped shut, his gaze found Ilera one last time. She didn't look away. Not out of cruelty, but because she no longer feared him. Outside, the world waited. When Rowan stepped into the daylight, free, the crowd erupted. Ilera pushed through them. They stood facing each other. No chains, no lies between them. You did it, Rowan said quietly. She shook her head. We did. He reached for her hand. She didn't hesitate. Months passed. The city moved on, as cities always do, but not everything returned to how it was. Ilera testified again, before committees, boards, anyone willing to listen. She became a voice people didn't expect, but couldn't ignore. The scar stayed. So did the strength. Rowan rebuilt his workshop into something new, a place that trained veterans, helped people discarded by systems that moved on too fast. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the river, Ilera stood beside him. Do you ever wish we'd never met? She asked softly. Rowan smiled, eyes warm. Every scar led me here. She leaned into him. I was abandoned at a station, she said. I thought it was the end. Rowan squeezed her hand. Sometimes, he said, the place where you're left behind is where you finally begin. Ilera looked out at the water, breathing in the quiet. She wasn't a bride anymore. She wasn't a victim. She was a survivor who chose truth over silence. And in a world that tried to erase her, she had done something far more powerful. She stayed. She spoke. She lived.